Welcome back to AGTube and our IPPS-A videos. Today we're going to talk about semi-centralized promotions, and we're going to start with the role of the company commander and their responsibilities inside IPPS-A. Now, promotions has changed quite a bit over the years, at least in my years. We used to rely, when I first came in, we relied predominantly on paper and using EDAS. And then we shifted towards the PPW and EDAS. And right now, I think we rely predominantly on EDAS, eMILPO, and the PPW. Within IPPS-A, there isn't some huge paradigm shift. We're going to do the same thing that we've always done. We're going to select, we're going to board, and we're going to promote. But there are some major changes in IPPS-A. The first being that we're going to try and do it all inside of IPPS-A, as opposed to 3 different systems. We're going to do it in 1 matrix instead of 3. But there are also some changes to the dates, and that will affect how the regulation changes and reads, and how we do things on the calendar with regards to semi-centralized promotions. But the first thing I need to do is click subscribe, because this is going to be a very involved, took a lot of work to get this video together, and so it's going to be a 3-part series for commanders, HR pros, and soldiers to understand how we're going to perform semi-centralized promotions within IPPS-A. And it's not all inclusive. There are still things that occur outside of IPPS-A, such as the board proceedings, but all of the input will happen within IPPS-A. So right now we do promotions on the Triple Alpha 294 from eMILPO. And each month, the Battalion S1 prints out that document, sends it to the commander ranks their recommendations, signs it, and sends it back to the S1. And that is done between the 20th of the month preceding the board and the 4th. So if we're talking about the May board, then you would print that 294 and send it to the company for validation between the 20th of April and the 4th of May. And within IPPS-A, all of that changes. So they've sort of binned things in a pre-board, board, post-board series, if you will. And that pre-board will now occur between the 1st and the 11th, as opposed to the 20th and the 4th. So that is a pretty significant change. Another major change is that it's no longer called the Triple Alpha 294. It's going to be called the Promotion Consideration Roster, or PCR. And that is done in IPPS-A. Instead of the Battalion S1 sending a report to the commander is going to be obligated to go into IPPS-A, make their recommendations, save it, and then notify the S1. So a couple of ways to skin that cat, but I would suggest that if you're a commander, that you put some sort of reminder on your Outlook to remind you to go in on between the 1st and the 11th, preferably closer to the 1st, to make your recommendations. And then when we get inside, I'll show you how you can notify through IPPS-A. And again, this is between the 1st and the 11th of the promotion month. So for the month of May, rather than getting my 294 on the 20th of April, I will go into IPPS-A on the 1st of May, 2nd of May, 3rd of May, whatever the case may be, and make my recommendations. So that again, that's a huge shift, is the naming convention is different and the dates are different. And so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go through how a company commander does it. It's actually quite simple, but there are some nuances and changes that you need to be made aware of. For company commanders, this is a great video, I think, to walk you through the process, but also for HR pros and soldiers and leaders to understand how it's done, so there's just no confusion. So I'm logged in as a company commander. I'm going to go to the nav bar, navigator, workforce administration, boards, and board roster. Okay, when the screen comes up, this is just going to give me the opportunity to search for what board I want. So as a company commander, what I should really see are the E4 to E5 board and E5 to E6 board. Now, what that's going to look like in production or in the real world, we don't know yet. I don't know if HRC has necessarily ironed that out. What I expect is that when you hit this search button, you're only going to see 2 choices. the E4 to E5 board and the E5 to E6 board. This board identifier is a number. We'll go through that. So really the quickest way to get there is to just hit this search bar. Now what you'll see that I have 4 boards here, and that's because within this environment I had to create a couple to make this video work. But ultimately you would see this board identifier here on the bottom left, 884. If you knew that the E4 to E5 board is 884, then you could type that in and kind of search for it. But again, I think by just hitting the search bar, you'll be able to figure out and find the one you're looking for a lot quicker. Now these boards are developed by HRC. So it's created by HRC. When you click on it, you're going to be filtering your people through that board's criteria. So the time and service requirements, time and grade requirements, all of the training requirements, everything in 600-8-19 that makes you eligible to appear on the roster for consideration is built into that template. And then they build a board based upon that template. Don't want to get too technical, but what you should ultimately see is 2 boards here, E45, E5 to E6. So we're going to click on this AGS E5 to E6. That's the one I created specifically for this lesson plan. All right, so when this board comes up, it gives us quite a bit of information at the top about the board. Of course, we talked about this board ID, the naming convention that it was given. It tells you that it's in the semi-centralized process, so you know you're in the right area. The template ID, like I talked about, is what HRC used to build this specific board. And then, of course, the name of the board itself. A couple other things I want to go over real quick. We talked about the template and the criteria, and that's where this time and grade zones and BASD zones fit in. So that template says you have to have X number of months of time and grade, X number of months of time and service to appear in the primary, secondary, and the MLI. So those dates will all shift each month as the promotion boards cycle through. We look at the convene date and the adjourn date. So this lets me know that it's a May board. Between the 12th and the 30th is when the S1 or when the battalion will have their promotion board, somewhere between the 12th and the 30th. Finally, it lets me know I'm in pre-board status. And again, we talked about pre-board, board, and post-board. So pre-board lets me know that I'm in the period where this is where I make my recommendations, soldiers can update their records, and all of those things can occur prior to the board actually convening. So when I scroll down a little bit further, I don't see any names, right? And in order to get those names, we have to hit the filtered button. But before I do that, you can filter your criteria. So if we just select that button right there, we can go through and say, I want to see only eligibles or ineligibles. I want to search by a UIC. As a company commander, I probably would only have one. But the HR supervisor can also pull this report for the battalion. So maybe they just want to look at a specific organization within their battalion. I can search by promotion MOS, or their primary MOS and their promotion MOS. And I can also look at all of these different board types of actions. But ultimately, I think the quickest way to do it is to make sure that all service members is selected and hit filter. Okay, so we hit the filter button. And when the screen refreshes, we scroll down, we see now we got a bunch of names on it. Okay, so this is just one company. Now, the reason we see a lot of ineligible or failed consideration is because this training database does not have any back-end training information for these actors. That is to say, there's no APFT, weapons qual, military education level. So they fail consideration because they don't meet the criteria to appear before the promotion board. So I went in and built some back-end data just so we could see 1 or 2 people show up. So for the battalion, there's about 3 or 4 that work, and for this company, there's just 1. But ultimately, this report looks a lot like a 294, or at least it contains the same information as a 294, right? It breaks down your individuals by name and rank. It tells you the zone that they're in. And so if we wanted to click on this, if we wanted to see this sort of in an order, if I just click on this, it will categorize everybody and group them into their board zone. And we can obviously click it and move it the other way. And now I see I have a list of individuals who will all be mandatory list integrated. And then I can select from my primary zone individuals and my secondary zone individuals. Okay, but again, we don't have a lot of individuals who meet the criteria of the board because there's just no training data. But I do have one, and so what you'll notice is that they do have an eligible check grade out next to their name, which means that when the consideration was, or when the eligibility was run at the end of the day or each night, an eligibility, this roster sort of refreshes. It lets me know that this individual's eligible. So if this was my roster in real life, after I got up from my heart attack, I would probably try and figure out why all these individuals don't have this training data associated with their record so that they can attend the board. So it's important that you're, as a commander and as a leader, that your DTMS is up to date with all your individuals' records so that that data migrates over during brownout cutover. But back to the report. So I can have two choices. I can recommend for the board or withhold from consideration. All of the requirements for individuals who are fully eligible and not recommended still exist. They just won't, those papers or those documents will not be stored within IPPS-A. They'll be locally managed at the company or battalion. And so I want to go ahead and recommend this individual for consideration. Okay, so I just select recommend. Now, while I'm in the pre-board process, I can always go back and change that. So it's the first of the month. I'm feeling good. Had a nice weekend. Company commander, I go in there and recommend everybody for promotion. And then Tuesday comes around, I get back to work, I'm not so happy, motor pool stables, had a bad command and staff meeting. I've decided that these three individuals aren't gonna go to the board. So I can go back in and change this again and just select withhold while I'm in the pre-board process. I can change my mind and update the record. Just make sure that you're letting your S1 know that, hey, I made a change. So, Sergeant Shamrock isn't going to the board anymore, and I've updated the PCR. So I'm gonna go ahead and select recommend for consideration. I'm gonna hit the save button. The page is saving, okay? Now I've recommended that individual for the board. Now I can hit this notify button. Now, it doesn't work in this training environment because none of these people have email accounts. But essentially, you would just type in the individual that you want the notification to go to, so the HR supervisor. You could, CC your first sergeant or whatever. It's just like a regular old email. It's just built inside of IPPS-A. And then just a quick message, hey, PCR's done, good to go. Please let me know when the board is, etc. You could also CC all of the individuals who are going to the board, and that would let them know it's time to make sure your records are straight before you go to the board. So that'd be another way to do it too. You could do it inside of here. But we're not gonna do that because it doesn't work in this training environment. And so as a company commander, ultimately my semi-centralized pre-board requirements have been met. I have made my recommendations. I have notified the S1. I've notified the soldiers, hey, you're going to the board. The S1 will let you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's really it. That's all there is to it. What we're gonna do on the next video is we're gonna kind of swoop in as the battalion S1, HR supervisor, and go through your requirements for the semi-centralized process as a battalion S1. So again, I'd like you to do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Leave some comments. If you have questions, let me know. I can reach out to a lot of the SMEs who helped design this system and maybe answer some specific questions. I've gotten a few emails with specific questions, so I'd be happy to try and answer those. We are still posting on MilTube and S1Net. So if you're on S1Net and you're watching these videos and you're getting the messages from Jerry Dillard, do me a favor and hit that follow the stream so you can see when new videos pop up. Again, we're posting these things on Twitter. I appreciate you watching. Defend and serve.